Welcome back to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Kettia Ming, author of Run the Mile You're In. Subtitle, One Founder's Journey Through Success, Loss, and Reinvention. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Welcome,
Mhm.
Kettia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start off with just talking about your book. It sounds like there's a story behind why you wrote it. So tell me,
Mhm.
tell me why you wrote your book and just kind of what led you to that.
Yeah, of course. So the book, I it took me about a year to write, but I like to say that it was like 10 years in the making,
Hmm.
because that's how long the story, when it started, it was about 10 years ago, where I had sold my business, and then the company I sold my business to came after me with a lawsuit over a non-compete, which was really like a legal loophole that they used to get me in that non-compete, which was that I had violated my non-compete by 100 feet as the crow flies, not as humans can walk it, but as the crow flies. And that really sort of was a huge blow to my business, to starting again, because I went from the same industry, which was a childcare company that I had started, and I was opening up two new childcare centers. And so when they came after me, I had already really invested so much of funding, especially from the sale of the first two companies. And it was just really devastating. It was a really hard blow, a really hard way to start what was essentially another startup, because I was really starting from scratch again. And it was everything that happened after that. So it's the aftermath of that, the legal challenges, the um, settlement with them, which they had sued me for $1.5 million. And what happened after I had to deal with all of that. And the book is more, it's much more than, about a lawsuit or entrepreneurship or even the business side of it. It's also about loss. It's about, the cost of doing business as a woman, the cost of doing business as a Black woman, the cost of, reaching success and all the things you have to give up along the way. I'm a mom of three, and my kids were very young at the time, and I was married, and sort of like the sacrifices I had to make during that time to kind of make everything work, and to make everybody, to prioritize everybody's needs and all the things that it required of me, right? So
Hmm.
there's a lot of themes that run through the book, and some of them are, like I said, motherhood, divorce, entrepreneurship, um, just resilience and reinvention. So those are the core themes that run throughout the book.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, the question that was next question in my mind was about the title and what that title, where the title came from, what that means to you. But as I was thinking about that, I was looking at behind you. There is a wall of medals, and so now I'm very curious if there's more to the title than I originally was thinking. So,
Yeah.
run the mile you're in. So, tell me about that.
Yeah, of course. So Run the Mile You In, it basically comes from running. I am a runner, and yes, the medals are from running. I've run 13 marathons and I
Wow,
countless halves, honestly. I have quite a good, I would say maybe about 30 halves, and then some 10Ks and 5Ks, etc.
wow,
So I've been a hardcore runner for like a really long time, and running, just taught me a lot. Because I always say that it's very much like life. You get out of it what you put into it. And so that's a running metaphor. Run the mile you're in. It's just a metaphor for presence. It's, to me, what I learned, especially when I was going through a lot of challenges and like a really hard time, is that nothing happens um outside of presence. Like nothing happens with worry about tomorrow or worrying about yesterday, or you can't run mile 25 when you're at mile 3. That's just the truth. Any runner will tell you that. Like your mind will try to take over, but it's just too much to envision that you're like, oh my gosh, it's only mile 3 and I have how many more to go? So that's something that I've learned to practice through running. And I had a running coach who actually gave me that line while we were training one day. And I've really applied that, and it really served me well in hard times and just, in just day to day life.
yeah.
So that's something that and that's where the title of the book comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, having run one marathon in my life, I know that you want to run mile 25 when you're at about mile 16. You're like, okay,
Right.
I'm
You're
done.
like, I'm done, right?
It's like
You're
the
done.
home
Yeah.
stretch of like, okay, I've made it over halfway, but I'm
Hmm.
not there yet. I got a long ways
Yeah.
to go. I remember
Yeah.
that very well.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was like hardest stretch, that like three-quarters of the way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. A hundred
Um,
percent.
so okay, so the book just sounds like such a like culmination of so many things in your life,
Hmm.
your business, your just your running and kind of the lessons you've taken away from that and how you apply that.
Hmm.
So yeah, so tell me about just how you use your story to encourage, inspire, motivate other the reader, the other people.
Yeah. So what I learned, not just in writing the book, just in general, before I got to the point where I could write the book, is that a lot of times we outsource our power to other people. When something happens, the initial sense is like, oh, let me find somebody to help me. Let me get an advisor or like the best lawyer or the best whoever it is, right? The mentor, whoever. And somehow that's going to help me get out of this. And there are times when that is very true. People do come in with their expertise and they do, and they can help. But what I have found is that honestly, nobody's really coming to save you. I mean, we have what it takes to help us out of most situations if we stop and think, if we don't panic. Panicking is like the worst thing you could do. And again, that takes me back to the whole concept of presence. When you stand silent, when you stay still for a minute and you can really start to think about your situation and whatever it is that is trying to take you out, um, you can get so much from like, what is the next step? What is the next? And it doesn't have to be that like you're going to figure it out today, right? But if you can at least figure out whatever that next step is and start to take whatever action to accomplish that, just one step at a time, you can start to move in the direction of whatever it is, right? That is out to get you, whatever that challenge is. And then of course, whoever can help you, but you first do not immediately think, let me go find a savior, because I
Hmm.
find that they don't exist. Like in real life, like they don't exist. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think what I would want somebody to take away is like just a lot more self trust, a lot more that, you are stronger, you are more powerful than you think you are. And there's so much that we don't give ourselves credit for because we think, hey, let me just get help. Let me just, but to really sit still and practice presence and practice giving yourself the benefit of the doubt before you
Hmm.
reach outwards. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the lawsuit situation you talked about, and just I think just being a business owner in general. I mean, that's like obviously a very extreme case of what you go
Hmm.
through, but like I think just being a business owner in general. I was late to starting business. I didn't start a business till just a couple years ago, and I've never experienced this type of anxiety and stress in my life.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh,
It gives me a new appreciation for like anyone running. I'm just like, holy
mhm.
cow, this is a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot.
So that said, how do you take it one day at a time? How do you take it 1 mile at a time when you're running that marathon? Like, how do you focus on? I like how you said it's like, what's the next step? But how do
Mhm.
you not worry about mile 25? Right now, like, what are some practical tips for people going through that kind of thing themselves?
Yeah, it takes practice. I'm not going to pretend that that's something that I learned overnight and then immediately started, to do that. It definitely takes practice. It takes training your brain and whatever that means for you, because we're different and we learn differently. For some people, it's like, at the end of the night, you write it down. You like what I call brain dump, you know? So instead of like going to bed and having your mind swirling and thinking about all of the what ifs and all of the possible scenarios, because there are so many. if you need to, one of the things that I find that is very useful, that is very practical too, is to kind of just take out a piece of paper and write it all down and look at it in black and white. It makes a big difference when you're looking at all your doomsday scenarios, and when you read it back to yourself, it hits differently than if you kind of just leave it up in your mind, right? And your mind's having a field day with all the things that could go wrong.
Hmm.
Um, for some people, it's something that takes their mind off of it, whether that's like a walk, right? If that's your thing, listening to music, like stepping outside of the thing that you are obsessing with. Because I've done the same thing, like where I'm worried about something, I can't even think about dinner or hanging out or doing something
Right.
fun or listen, because you're just so obsessed with like, let me figure this out. What if I do this? And what, like, at some point, the solution is not going to be in the thing, right? You have to step outside of it. And once you start to look at things very clear eyed, however the distraction is for you that's going to help you, you use that, whatever that method is. For some, for me, it's running. For some people, it's not. For a lot of people, it's not. People are like, I don't like running. Whatever brings you to, figuring out what your solution is. And for some people, it's meditation. For some people, it's like I said, like a walk or, but sitting still. The part that I cannot emphasize enough is being still in that problem and then looking at it in all different kind of ways and writing things down. It
Hmm.
really does put things in perspective, in terms of what are the practical things that I can do, to help me with this, with your business or,
Yeah.
a partner, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, so the writing of the book was probably a marathon of itself. So like what led you to write? Like what was the thing that you were like, I've got to write this?
hmm so I was in a class. I was part of like an accelerator program, which is called Goldman Sachs 10KSB, and they have speakers who come in all the time and talk to us like throughout the entire program. And somebody had come in and was talking about it. Actually, the whole session was on negotiations, and she had been
Hmm.
talking about how bringing your full self to the table in any situation, but especially in negotiations, because the person you're negotiating with, a lot of times they just want to relate to you as a person, right? Not just like buy my thing or whatever it is.
Right.
And she had felt that she had made she decided she was in a negotiation situation, and she said something that she thought was like embarrassing, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, why did I say that? This person's gonna blah blah. And then suddenly the person opened up and was like, you know what, that happened to me too. I didn't, know that anybody had experienced it or whatever. So she just, and then she realized, she is like, your mess is your story. That was one of the lines that she had said, and I remembered that, right? And I remember thinking to myself, at the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, like, I know like this is a mess in my head that I've always trying to avoid. Like this whole business to me was just a business fail. It was like, I don't want to talk about it. Like whenever people would bring it
Hmm.
up, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I never want to get into it. But it would always nag at me, like how it happened, the way it happened, how I felt during all of it, and the
Yeah.
things that I went through. And I remember sitting down on my computer that night and I started just writing out. And at first I was like, oh, I just want to write like in journal in a way so that I don't forget this whole thing. And
Hmm.
then when I started writing, and as soon as I started writing, honestly, and I remember the prologue was as the crow flies, which was the term that they, named. And it just dawned on me that it was like I was gonna write the whole story. Like it just started to come out like very naturally, like very organically. Like I just started to remember things, and I started writing it in journal style. So it wasn't a manuscript at that point. I wasn't like, oh, I'm writing a book. I really, at that point, I was just writing my story. I was just writing it like as a journal entry, kind of like the way it happened. And
Hmm.
I just kept writing, and it became pages and pages and pages. And it wasn't until then I realized, oh, maybe it's a manuscript. Maybe it's a book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Yeah.
like how it started for me.
That's great. It's like just it was just coming from inside you
Yeah.
and yeah, I love that. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
for a purpose of publishing it necessarily. It's just that's kind
Yeah.
of what ended up happening.
Hmm.
Um, well, and so how has this book, when did you publish it? May, oh gosh, you
In
just
May,
published it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's only a month. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So by the time this comes out, it'll be a little bit later,
Yeah.
but yeah, so recently just came out. So how are you using
Hmm.
this in your overall, you mentioned that you started more daycare centers. So is that the primary thing that you do?
Right now, I do not. So I am out of the daycare business. So initially that was my business, and then I sold those first two daycares to Bright Horizons, and then the next two that was in litigation, I ended up selling those to KinderCare. So I
Oh,
am not in that business. I'm currently the executive director of a theater company, a nonprofit theater company, and the book is really just the story that I wanted to tell about everything that had happened in the last 10 years. And my goal, my hope is really that people can read that and get whatever they can get from it, whether that's the entrepreneurship part, whether that's the, reinvention part, or how I dealt with the divorce, or how I dealt with the business bankruptcy. There's so many different themes in the book that people are pulling from, and they're like, oh my gosh, when you wrote that like that, I really felt that. There's a passage in there that I wrote to my children. It's a chapter that I call Letters to My Children. And people really read that and it resonates so much because they see themselves as either as parent or as children, and their mother was not able to talk to them in that way. So there are many, many different parts or themes of the book that touch different people, depends on what that person needs at that time. And so that's sort of like I never know what people are going to tell me after they read it. I get so many different reactions
yeah,
that
yeah,
yeah, it's been really, really just gratifying, and just such a good feeling to know that some of the things I didn't want to write about, that it's really helping other people.
yeah.
So that's kind of where I am right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had, for me, it was, when I lost my job, that's like something that, I was laid off, but like, there's still just shame and embarrassment and, things with
Yes.
that where you're like, I don't want to tell anyone. Like, it's just an awful experience. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first few podcast interviews I did where I was telling the story, it was like, I hated leading with, well, I lost my job. So I started this business. I lost my job. So this, and then I
Yeah.
started like owning it. I was like, well, I mean, because it was speaking to people, like other
Yeah.
people have, I couldn't believe how many people told me, like, oh, yeah, I've been through that. Like, oh, that's happened, and then I realized, like,
Yes.
oh, like, it's not just me. It's, a lot of
Yeah.
people go through this. It's
Yeah.
okay. And then to be able to share, I lost my job and I started a business um, now I get to talk about like the downsides of starting a business, but like,
Yeah.
it's still
Yeah.
exciting and fun. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
No, you help a
anyways,
lot of people by telling that story. I mean, do
yeah,
you know how many people? Yeah, you help a lot of people.
right. Yeah. I mean, the first time I spoke publicly, it was actually a month ago this year, or a year ago this month. It was
Hmm.
last June. Where I just shared the story and like just how inspired people were by like my journey. And that was just in the
Yeah.
first, less than a year of starting my business and being on my own and whatever. And that was where I realized like, oh, okay, like it feels hard to share these things. And also like it is what speaks to people. And then it has allowed me to
Hmm.
go down this path of like, how can I help other people going through similar situations,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's so true. I mean, yeah. And your lawsuit situation sounds like a terrible thing to deal
Yeah.
with. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, fortunately, or hopefully I never have to deal with that. Unfortunately, I haven't before,
Hmm.
but I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are dealing with things,
Yeah.
something like that, right? Like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
situation where there's just stuff in business that
Hmm.
I never anticipated having to deal with.
Yeah.
Um just, and for me it's like I'm doing more client serving kind of stuff and you're like, wow, I didn't know that people would do these kinds of things and I have to deal with
Hmm.
this and I have to decide how to, and anyways, so yeah, it's just sharing that with people and I think that's a side of business that people don't lead with. Like
Yeah.
you don't hear client horror stories
No.
often, right? Because the people aren't showing up on LinkedIn going, guess what happened to me? Like you don't want to
Right.
share those things,
Yeah.
but there are some things you can share in a way that is, whenever I talk to other business owners, like I'm encouraged when I hear that, like, oh, you've also dealt with a client who didn't pay you and you had to,
Mhm.
go through that, or
Mhm.
you dealt with
Yeah.
this or that, and you just hear stories and you're like, okay, like
Yeah.
it's not just me.
Yeah, it's not just you. And I think people really appreciate those stories more than the success ones. I mean, the success stories are great, right? They're trophies. They're like, look what I did and look how much I made. And you hear those a lot. There are no shortage of success stories. Um, but I think sometimes people gloss things and just gives you kind of like the press release version as opposed to like the inside the kitchen version.
Yeah.
We don't get those as often as we we could use. So when
Yeah.
you do come out on your podcast and you talk, about your situation and why you did and where you people appreciate that. And I think
Yeah.
they learn so much more from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Well, Kettia, what's next for you?
Well, next I will continue to promote the book. I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I'm also
Okay.
I have a community, a newsletter of women who I write to like once a week now, and I'm sort of working that into a community and possibly a cohort at the end of the year that we would do a retreat. So I'm working on several different things around the book. And we'll probably start writing my second book next year. So
Okay.
that's where I am. Yeah. So
Got
I'm
another
very
one in ya,
excited.
huh?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Mhm.
Well, tell us where readers or viewers can learn more about you, connect with you online. You mentioned your newsletter.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
Yeah, so my website, it's my whole name, is just kettiaming.com, just kettiaming.com. That's it. Everything's there. You can sign up for the newsletter, you can follow me on social, you can buy the book. It's all there. And then you can also buy the book wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all these bookstores. You can, pull up the name and just buy the book at any of those, whatever's convenient for you. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, we'll link to the book in the show notes and also your website, like you mentioned. Thank you, Ketia. Thank you for coming on, and thanks for your
Yeah.
vulnerability and sharing your story, not only
Yes.
in the book but then also on podcast. So thanks for being a guest.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to meet you, and I was so happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com